It's Wrestling Observer Radio. Garrett and Dave here on a Friday night. FYI, we are recording before SmackDown and Rampage. Actually, SmackDown's in the background going right now, but we won't have those recaps. I'm sure you and Brian will talk about it tomorrow when you guys do your Saturday night show after the UFC. But Dave, is there any update with Hall of Fame balloting?
Not really. It's done. I have all the ballots in, so I have to start counting soon. But as far as nothing really, no.
Do you have an expectation in when you want to get everything done so that we all know who is in and who didn't make it?
As soon as possible, which with my schedule is not necessarily that soon. If there was like a break and there was a week without a lot of news, I could get this done fairly soon if there was no news. So I just need a break on that. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful of getting it done this week. But I don't know. But I'll get it done. My mentality is as I would like the Hall of Fame issue to be the issue that would come out. The day before Christmas, I guess, like the 23rd, 24th. That would be my idea in a perfect world, but that requires a couple of days with no wrestling news. I know there was like one day, Tuesday, I think it was, where it was like, man, there's no wrestling news. That's so cool. And I got a lot of work done on that day, which is probably why the issue's so big this week. But then, Lanza dies and Jeff Hardy gets fired. So it's like getting ahead wasn't really, you know what I mean? It didn't benefit me as much as I thought.
Yeah, I mean, the Hardy story was the lead story in today's Observer. When the news about what happened came out, and I mean, I didn't really know anything other than what everyone else said is, he walked out of the match and walked through the crowd, which seemed like sort of weird. I think people were just sort of hoping like maybe he got his bell rung or something, and just
no, because he was messed up before the match started.
Yeah, I mean when that came out, that was my hope, because my hope was that it wasn't what people would expect when it came to Jeff Hardy, and it sounds like it was that, and he refused to go to rehab, and they had to fire him.
Yeah, I don't think that WWE had any choice in the matter at all, because it was, you can't say it wasn't on their time, because it was on their time. It's one thing after the match. It's another thing before the match. He was in the main event. Not that, not that it's any different if he was in a prelim match, but still it's in the main event. And yeah, they had to, and again, it's not like it's a first time, and it's a long track record dating back, 16 years, 17, 18 years, whatever it's been. So at that point, you kind of have to, there's really only one choice. And if he says no, then you kind of have to cut bait with him. I mean, I don't think WWE, I'm sure they didn't want to do it. I think that they felt that they had no other choice but to do it.
Gosh, I had a question on the tip of my tongue right when you were talking, and I forgot. Oh, I know what it was. Did it seem like he was being built as a possible contender to Roman as we're sort of getting into what they're getting into before Rumble and WrestleMania? Because that's what it seemed like to me, which is, they were kind of getting fans excited to see him in the main event.
I don't think so, but I think that it's one of the things with like Jeff Hardy and Rey Mysterio is you can always throw them in there and people will always get behind them no matter how badly you abuse them. I mean, Jeff was never the Hardys when they were brought back, and this is 4 years ago. I mean, it was really like big pop at WrestleMania, and by a month in, they were doing jobs. I mean, Vince didn't have any interest in them really, past the big pop and bringing them back. And Jeff, he wasn't even being used well at all. But the crowd always still gets behind him, so you always have that thing. It's like, oh, well, we got no ideas. What do? We can always throw Jeff in to get beat. And you could always do that. I didn't sense that that's where they were going, but it's always something you can do.
You wrote in your story, and I remember this very vividly, there was a moment where, when Cena was on top, where Hardy felt like kind of like the most popular guy.
No, the last year he was in WWE, I think it was 08 or 09, 2009. I mean, like, I would talk to people in WWE, and we all acknowledged that Jeff Hardy's the most popular guy in the company. But, it was like, for a number of reasons, they felt that it was safer to go with Cena in that spot, and they did, and they were right. But, but Hardy was, pretty much everyone conceded that Hardy was the most popular guy in the company. Even like I remember with the Google searches, he would be ahead of Cena, which is unbelievable because that's a name value thing. So he was really, really popular, at that stage, which was interesting because when he went to TNA, while he was a big draw in TNA, especially at arena shows, as big a draw as you could be in TNA, but it was never the same. It was like he went from being the top guy in WWE popularity-wise, and he went to TNA, and it never felt like, and maybe it's because of the Hogan aura, because he went in when Hogan went in, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to be a big monster there. He's the hottest guy. And then in TNA, it just felt like Hogan and Ric Flair and these guys were all overshadowing him. And while he still would go out there and draw and get the big pop, so the fans were behind him, he wasn't like a focal point of the TV, and he didn't feel as big. And I remember even friends of his used to tell me, he goes, for whatever reason, Jeff never feels as big outside of WWE as he does in WWE.
And then the other big stories, Gargano situation. It looks like today he has a new PWT's store for his shirts, and then Twitch and YouTube stuff. So he's getting back out there very quickly from that perspective. And Kyle O'Reilly, of course, as well. Just both of their situations coming up at the same time. Pretty interesting. Any updates on that stuff?
Yeah, both of their contracts are up as we speak. They are both free agents today. They can go anywhere. They could be on Winter is Coming on Wednesday, both of them, if that's what they want to do, and if Tony Khan can make the deal with either of them, it could happen. The impression I know in WWE is that they're taking time off. And I think that, the one thing is they can legally listen to anyone and everyone. And, they're both going to make a decision based on what it is. The Twitch thing, a lot of people have gone, the Twitch thing is like, or the Pro Wrestling Tees thing is like a giveaway. And it's not a giveaway of anything because they should market themselves now that they can. And then as far as the Twitch thing, it's like, yes, if Johnny Gargano was on the main roster, he could not go on Twitch and you'd have to shut it down. But he's not going on the main roster. We've already established that for years, that he's not going to be on the main roster. He's going to be an NXT guy. And NXT, you can have a Twitch channel in NXT. It's not this, that talent was not banned from that. So he could, in theory, keep that up if he comes back. So whatever. But, he should be doing stuff. He should be keeping his name out there. And obviously, any way to make money right now, because he's not getting, he's not getting a WWE guaranteed paycheck. It's not like it's 90 days like somebody else, or 30 days or whatever it's going to be, where you can kind of wait it out and everything because you're still getting paid. He's not. His contract's up. It's expired, and he wanted to do a War Games, so he gave it another week, and finish up which same thing Adam Cole did. Finish up the program, that they were good to you, finish up the program, and then figure it out from there. And, with O'Reilly, if he gets an offer from AEW, and I don't know if he will or he won't, but if he gets an offer from AEW, I would think he would go. I don't really see I can't come up with a reason not to. For Gargano, I could come up with reasons on arguments both ways. Mm-hmm. As far as there's a lot of different things to consider, and he's gonna make his choice. I don't know what it'll be. I pretty much know that he's not made his choice. He could go back. I know people have looked at that farewell thing as like he's not, the thing after the show. And I think that's because he's not expecting to come back anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it just depends on the offer and where his head's at and what he wants out of, you know, I think he's 34. It's what he wants out of the next couple of years. If he wants, you know, new opponents, then he should go. But it's not that simple, and it's not all about him. I mean, if it was all about him, it's one thing, but it's the family, and you've got to think about that. I mean, there's a big advantage as far as if he stays in NXT, he lives in Orlando. They're not touring, and I don't know when they're going to tour. I've heard, you know, nothing about them touring at all. And even before, when I did hear talk of them touring, which never materialized, it was only going to be in Florida. So the point of all this is that he, you know, he's going to have a kid, and he's going to be, if he goes to NXT, he will be home every single night.
Mm-hmm.
He will wrestle, you know, or do TV one night a week. And that's not the, you know, get a paycheck. His wife's going to get a paycheck, and they could live there. If he goes to somewhere else, or goes on into, or just goes in these dates, he won't be home as much. Now, he may want to travel, and that may, you know, he may want to do more matches. I don't know all the different things that are going through, but it's not like in his case. There's more to consider. Even though Kyle is also, you know, having a kid and, you know, lives in the area. And so I guess in that sense, you would say it's the same thing for Kyle. But I think the difference is that Kyle, to me, has no future in NXT. I think they've really established that. They're going with a different type of person. Johnny's sort of got this legacy in NXT of being a bigger star. So they may feature him more, even though, yes, they're going away from that direction, and he'll, you know, but so like for Kyle, if he has any aspirations of doing great things in wrestling, he needs to get out of there. Johnny doesn't need to get out of there, but it may be better outside, but it may not. You know, I mean, it's not like, I mean, there are other places to be, and you know, there's New Japan. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. You know, I mean, although I wouldn't bank on anything with New Japan for a while still, you know, because it's, you know, the regulations in Japan obviously are still very, very strict, and they can't bring new people in still. And I don't know when that's going to change, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, I think it's got to be a little scary to not have at least one source of income while a child is coming. So the fact, you know, doing the store and the Twitch and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, it says, here's the thing. If he was adamant about staying, you know, both of them, this goes for both of them. If either of them were adamant about staying, they'd have signed, because why go without the guaranteed income if you're going to stay? So this tells me that they're both very seriously exploring leaving.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you don't, there's no need to let your contract expire. It's not like WWE did not offer either of them deals. They've offered both of them deals. And Gargano, they offered, you know, I mean, a better deal than he's getting. I don't know. I don't have any idea what they did or didn't offer Kyle. But, so, you know, it's like to not sign tells you that they are very serious about exploring other offers. I mean, because you don't let it get that far if you know, if you don't sign. You know, there's a reason you haven't signed.
The thing to me that would really be important to look into is just the fact that AEW, their contracts, Tony Khan has yet to cut someone in the same way that WWE seems to cut folks, you know, every 6 months
left
or
and
whatever.
right.
That would be really scary to me, even if the money is actually better in WWE. And there are other things that you pointed out, especially with Gargano, about proximity to home and being able to go home. Like, all of that stuff is really important too. But from a stability standpoint, just that would just be constantly in the back of my head about the idea that, you know, at any point, for no reason whatsoever, even, that they could just cut that contract and be done. And then you, not to say that, you know, that means a whole lot to the leverage, but you do lose.
No, it does.
You do lose the leverage there.
It lowers your leverage when you go out. Once you're fired, you don't have the same leverage that if, like right now, as a free agent, if you know what I mean. So with the knowledge that WWE wants you. So, yeah, no, it hurts your leverage. And it is a factor. Without a doubt, that's a factor that and again, they've cut some surprising people. So you can't say, unless you're, Roman Reigns or Big E or the New Day or people at that level, that contract, no matter how much money it is, it's conditional. It's not 5 years, it's 90 days essentially. And you have to go with that, that is part of the deal, unless you go in there and get a no cut. And the reality is there are no cuts there, but there are very, very few of them, and yeah, if you're Seth Rollins, even if you don't have a no cut, or Becky Lynch, if you don't have a no cut, I'd feel pretty safe. I'd be really, really safe if I was them. But, that's, they're the exceptions to the rule, not the rule.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about the Dynamite rating here. So if I'm reading this correctly, Dynamite was up 0.02 in 18 to 49 and about 10,000 or so.
No, they were up more than that. They were up I think it was like 5%. Hold on, I can actually get the numbers. This is the right one. No, that's the wrong show. Yeah. So Dynamite would be where we go. Up 1.3%. Overall, up 4.9% in 18 to 49.
There was a stat that you had in this week's Observer. I'll just read from it. You said, in November, AEW Dynamite did 896,000 viewers on average same day and 167,000 on average via DVR. The 1,063,000 total was lowest since March and down from the September peak of 1.4 million.
Yes.
What do you believe are the reasons for those drops?
There's a lot of reasons. The number one is the West Coast time slot. You're talking about 23% of the country watching it from 5 to, and not all of them are, because there's people who have dishes and everything. But they would, get it at 5 to 7 as well. Now that I think about it, but they always did. But the point is, you got 23% of the country outside of prime time. That's going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt you as much as a drop from 1.4 million to 1.1 million. If we're including DVR numbers and everything like that. But those numbers, they did get, the beginning of Punk and Danielson and those guys being in there. That was a level they were not going to maintain. They were, you would hope that you weren't going to maintain 0.53s. The hope is you would maintain a 0.40, but you probably weren't going to maintain that, with West Coast outside of prime time. Maybe you could, but that's a big part of it. Again, like the other one, there's a lot of other reasons. You can talk about, if you compare from a star power standpoint, the Monday show and the Wednesday show, the Raw and the Dynamite, it's like Raw throws, big time main events out at you week after week. Now they have shitty finishes and the AEW matches are actually better, but that's not what people. There was a period when AEW first started getting strong in '99 where the idea of having like a 4.5-star match on TV, nobody ever saw stuff like that. But now they do, and also AEW doesn't have that as much as they did. They have good matches, but it's like when you're seeing great matches multiple times a week, they're not going to move you as much as when in the old days when we would see one every 4 months, because TV was all squashes and everything, and the wrestling was at a different level. So it's like, yes, it did work when AEW first started. Having great matches was absolutely part of the calling card. But now that's expected. It doesn't move people like it did before. I mean, you need more marquee matches, which is going to mean more. And, like WWE did, Big E, their champion, against Kevin Owens, who's, their number 2 or 3 contender in theory, in a cage. Becky Lynch, their champion, defending against Liv Morgan, who's, there's, again, Bianca's the top other star, and they're obviously keeping that away for a while. But Liv is, the upcoming whatever. And they were doing a tournament for the tag team titles, even if the teams aren't the greatest or whatever. And AEW's got, a battle royal, which we see all the time, whatever. And Bryan Danielson and John Silver. And Bryan Danielson is great, but John Silver is not a singles main eventer at the level, he's not. He's not a singles main eventer. So you're not having, the one thing that I can think of is I used to, like, on Wednesday, kind of like get up and I would always think, oh man, I'm excited, whatever. And I could always figure when I was really excited, AEW always did a good number. When I wasn't that excited, AEW did an average number. And the excitement is based on the matches, like I can see a great match or you've got some hot program or whatever, right? And I don't get that excitement when I wake up on Wednesday morning. It's like, oh, okay, it's Dynamite. I'm sure it's going to be good. It's always good. But it's not like, oh, man, I cannot wait for X match. It's like Bryan Danielson, John Silver, well, of course they're going to have a good match. Young Bucks against Romero and Taylor, well, of course it's going to be good, but is it going to be a dream match? Is it going to be like off the top, off whatever, like a match is going to be so special we're going to be talking about it in 3 weeks? Probably not. And that's what they probably the matches that we talk about more and more and more, that would be good, but that's not going to be the difference maker either. And I'm not advocating that they go in there and do a whole bunch of like main event pay-per-view matches and do DQ finishes or bad finishes like WWE does. I don't know if that's the answer either, because quite frankly, when I'm comparing the two, when you look at how long each company's been around and the star power that each company has and everything. I mean, telling AEW to copy WWE is really pretty stupid, because AEW has been, based on the size of the company and the name value of the guys, they're far, far more successful than WWE is at moving the audience, getting fans, and getting paying fans, and the whole bit, everything that a wrestling promotion is supposed to do. So it's like, I wouldn't say like copy WWE, no, but still, when you're looking at just the star power matchmaking week to week, as far as big stars, more often than not, the Raw show is going to have it more than the Dynamite show. I'm not saying, and I think it's very rare when the Raw show is better than the Dynamite show, but, so that's one of the things, and also, Moxley's gone and Omega's gone. And they were, as far as like, when this company was formed, I mean, the single stars that carried the company were Moxley, Omega, and Chris Jericho. And Jericho, kind of, and he's not around. Jericho's not around either. And still, he's a big star. And granted, now you do have Punk, you do have Danielson. MJF is certainly a star now, but still, like the guys who got you in, they're not around, and that hurts too. And they were. Kenny Omega was the champion when they were doing that number. And, the idea was, Danielson's chasing him, Punk could be chasing him. And again, like the title change, Page did need to win. They could have held it back, but then the other thing is that, Kenny was struggling and had all the injuries. And it's like, how much do you want to push him back? You know what I mean? I mean, the original thing was September. He stayed through November. He was hurting really bad. It was optimum for booking for long-term business. The best thing to do would have been to keep the title on Omega, go through a big program with Danielson, go through a big program with Punk, then go to Page. But that, I don't know that Omega's body could handle that. And so they did what they did. They got to Page, which was always the goal. But now everyone's on, oh my God, what's going on? Page, blah, 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 and it's like, that's what you wished for, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
the other thing with the AEW that the people have to realize is, and this is the thing with Heyman on Raw. If you remember when Heyman started on Raw, those numbers were going down, 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 and we all knew they would because his whole goal was make Ricochet, make Cedric Alexander, make blah 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 blah, right? And then he got cut off on every one of them, Aleister Black, whatever. Got cut off on all of them. It didn't happen, but that was the goal. The goal, they're very clearly. I mean, like Raw is very clearly being booked for Monday's rating, and then Monday's rating, and then Monday's rating. And AEW is being booked for, 2025, 2026, 2027. It's a completely different philosophy. And he's not looking at hot-shotting ratings. Maybe at some point he will, but he's not. I mean, he's doing it differently. He's putting Dante Martin on TV and pushing him, knowing that no, Dante Martin's not going to draw you big numbers this week. He's not. Jungle Boy's not even going to. This week. The only one who's really proven, to do that is Darby of the new guys, and MJF, I have to say too, but. The thing is that when you're building for the future, you are sacrificing the present, and that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing. So there's different things, there's different aspects to it, but just Bryan Danielson going out there and having a great match, that week after week after week, that has not proven to be a big time draw. Was the Bryan Danielson heel turn a good idea? We'll find out on Wednesday because Wednesday's show should, in theory, because it's been built up for weeks. It is the world title match. Wednesday should do real well. If Wednesday doesn't do real well, then we got to ask other questions. But real well is 10% lower or 9% lower than real well was a couple of months ago because of the time change that a lot of people don't even factor in. Just just talk about the number dropping, and it has, but there's a lot of different things that you need to look at. It's not necessarily good, but it is what it is. And really, I mean, this week's number is interesting because it is a marquee match that they've been built up. But really, all these numbers are irrelevant until we get January 5th because then they're going to be on, in theory, back in prime time on the West Coast. In theory, we don't know that. Nobody knows that. TBS has not made that decision yet. But the belief is that will be the decision that they make. And they're on a different channel. They're going to have different lead-ins. There's all kinds of things. Is the new channel going to be, better than the old channel? It may not be. It may be better. I mean, it's like I can look at the numbers, the primetime numbers of the two channels, and they're pretty close. But the TNT channel is buoyed by the NBA. You take away the NBA, and TBS is actually the stronger channel. So and TBS will give them better lead-ins. In theory, all things being the same, between better lead-ins, better channel, and West Coast back to a normal time, we're going to get a January artificial jump where everyone's going to go, oh my God, Tony's a genius, and when it may mean absolutely nothing. So, or we may not get that at all. It may also be that the channel confuses people and they don't get a bump. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like but the whole ball game changes in January anyway. So these December numbers, they're not really relevant to anything all that important to me right now because, like, again, January is where it's going to be, and then it's the build for the January 8th special and where they're going for the pay-per-view and everything like that. So, I mean, they certainly this last week were starting to build up a lot of different matches in a lot of different directions, and they need to because they're going to have a lot of different shows.
So you brought up Adam Page, and I was just having this conversation, and even before he beat Omega for the title, like my worry was that this story was very much about the journey and then sort of what happens after that. And I don't know. The key to that is the challengers,
right? But the problem is the challenger that they had in mind was Moxley,
right?
I think I'm pretty sure the challenger they had in mind with Moxley. So it's like we didn't get that. We didn't get that direction. I mean, Danielson in some ways is a bigger name, but I don't think, I think that, again, and who knows, with Moxley, people may have rejected Moxley turning as well. I mean, it didn't happen yet. We don't know. We don't know exactly how the turn was going to be or what it was going to be. I don't, do people want Danielson to be a heel? I think some people think it's cool and fun, but do they really want that? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But it's what you kind of had to do in that situation when that situation brought itself up. So, yeah, I mean, it's like the new champion, when it's a baby face, it's contingent on, strong heels to go against. And we haven't had it yet. We haven't had, Danielson match hasn't even taken place yet. Probably, they may go out there and tear the frickin' house down, and they probably, I expect that they will. I mean, I expect it will be an absolutely incredible match. And, that may help things too.
But also, exactly what you said, but also I watched the TV, and he was barely on the show on Wednesday. He had the original back and forth with Danielson on that first post pay-per-view show, but otherwise he's kind of like not done a whole lot. And I just, I was just thinking that, okay, now this becomes somewhat the Adam Page show, and Dynamite and Rampage have absolutely not turned into the Adam Page show.
No, it's the CM Punk and Bryan Danielson and MJF show, without a doubt. Yes. But Bryan Danielson's being set up for, the match next week. And then the other two are, one of the other two is going to be probably the next opponent. And their program is very good. Their program is drawing, every thing that they do. I mean, the one thing, again, with Punk, if the goal with Punk is at whatever, 43, 44 years old, if the goal with Punk is that, I think he's actually a little younger than that, but if the goal with him is, to long-term build your company, then he's doing that because he absolutely is helping MJF become more and more solidified as a major player. And, MJF is, that's, he could be the franchise guy, down the line, or, for 15 years. I mean, he can be that guy. And so they're getting him in that mix. So again, that's building him. And then his stuff with Punk is working. I mean, some people may not like some of it, and, I don't always like every single thing, but overall, when I see him, and granted Wednesday was unique because it was in Long Island, and he was going to come off like a big, big star, but even not, when he comes out there, when that music plays, people genuinely hate the guy. So that's a good thing for him.
When you were watching that show, did you expect Punk to get the booze that he got? Like before you actually saw the segment, like if you had thought about it, would you have thought?
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't. I thought he would get booed, and they made sure of it by having him come out to MJF's music. So
right.
So it's not like he came out to his music. I think if he came out to his music, they would sing the song and everything like that. But once you start talking about MJF, I think that they would have booed him. But when he came out to the music, that meant that he wasn't going to get cheered for the song because they're not getting the song. But I think they'd have cheered the song. Maybe they may have booed the song just because he's the one feuding with him too. So I mean, yeah, I was expecting that. Yeah,
because the first thing I thought of was I was like, wow, I didn't expect the boos to be that vociferous, though. Like you said, they did set it up that way, and I was thinking,
and also his promo exaggerated it too because he played into it strong. I mean, the first thing he does is the Islanders have never won in this building, and I mean, from there it's just like, okay, you're 100%. It's not like you're going to get a mixed reaction from after that one.
I was just thinking, like, what if if this was a WWE thing and they had scripted it, and then what if they were a little off in the expectation of what the crowd was like? I was like, yeah,
then they would, the thing, if it was WWE, they had the announcers like ripping on the audience and blaming the audience and then and getting real mad. The WWE would probably be furious at that whole show because they wouldn't want to compromise the character and everything like that, and they wouldn't want their guy getting booed, like that, or their heel getting cheered either. But, you gotta, one of the things with wrestling now is everyone knows it's a show. So when the guy's from your hometown, it's going to supersede that, him playing bad guy and good guy if he's a main eventer.
You had also mentioned Jericho. It sounds like he's okay.
From what I hear, okay is a funny word. I haven't heard that he's like obviously his concert tonight was canceled. I have not heard if he's going to be doing his Saturday night concert. I don't know yet. Obviously, if he's not, then it's, a little worse. If he is, then it's not so bad. I believe he's out of the hospital. I heard he was going to be let go in the morning, but I have not heard that 100%. That's what I'd heard last night, and I haven't heard anything since late. I heard late last night, but I haven't heard anything since late last night.
So Bandito tested positive for COVID-19. He's not going to be able to compete at the Final Battle pay-per-view, and so instead of him, it looks like Jay Lethal against Gresham.
Yeah. Tony Khan let them have Jay Lethal for the show, and they'll have a good match. They'll have a great match. I don't know how much interest there is in a lame duck show from a promotion that maybe there's going to be some nostalgia or something. It's the last show, maybe, but I don't know that. It's like it's kind of like their last show. Yeah, it's kind of sad that it is, and it's sad that they had they lost their main event right before it. But that could happen to anyone at any time in this day and age.
Was he supposed to also be out here tonight?
Bandito's supposed to be here tonight. Yeah. So they had to pull. Who did they have replace him? I forgot already. Was it Ray Horace replaced him on tonight's show in San Francisco? Yeah.
And then is that expected to be all of the Tony said he was going to help. Is that the help, or do you expect anyone else from AEW to show up?
I haven't heard anyone else. I don't. There's no other they have a whole full card, so there's really no need for anyone else. I mean, it's a long, a long deep card with a lot of matches that should be decent to really really good. Like Dragon Lee and Ray Horace is probably going to be a great match. The Briscoes and Taven Bennett has a nice story. The Briscoes going for the title on the last show for now. They've been there forever. So yeah, I don't see the need for anything else. They definitely needed some help for the main event when you lose the main event with 2 days to go. And Lethal's a guy. I mean, they sent him to Mexico too, so it's evidently he's a guy that he's willing to send. Because he's done it in two shows.
They're going head to head with a pretty big UFC show tomorrow night.
What do you think of the UFC? I mean, because it's interesting to me because Poirier has 2 wins over Conor that did giant numbers. Now he's going for the title. In theory, this should do Poirier should be a really big draw from those 2 wins, and him going for the title should be a real big deal. But I don't feel like a million buy show or anything close. I think the show will do reasonably. I think the show will do very well, well over average. But I don't feel like I don't know. I'm a day in, and I don't feel like this is going to be a monster show business wise. I don't have that feeling.
So you had made the comparison to Bob Arum talking about Manny Pacquiao on the last show that you did with Brian. And I thought it was an interesting comparison because from what I remember, De La Hoya was the setup guy for Pacquiao. And De La Hoya somewhat was interested in doing that because he thought he was going to be able to sign Pacquiao as well to Golden Boy. And I don't know, who would have been the like if you had McGregor set up as the fall guy to lose to some up-and-comer to make that person a star, would Poirier have been the guy?
As much as anyone. I mean, who else? Gaethje? You know what I mean? Who else is there? I'm trying to think. I mean, like what Islam Makhachev or somebody like that's
and because
not,
I couldn't come up with anybody off the tip of my tongue, and I think that's the difference in your analogy, which is Pacquiao
was a star already.
Well, and to the hardcores, he was like the guy whose fight you couldn't miss, even before the De La Hoya fight, because he was so.
But
exciting.
Isn't Poirier the same thing though in that regard? I mean, he's not the star Pacquiao was.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty close. He's someone who
he should be a big star with 2 wins over McGregor, especially the first of the two, because the first of the two he just he hammered him in one. The second one, I mean, he was going to win the second one either way. I mean, it was sort of a weird, finish with a broken leg and everything, but he was going to win that fight for sure. I mean, even though McGregor says otherwise, I think, even though, I mean, McGregor did have some nice stuff in the early seconds, where it was kind of like, oh, hey, maybe we're going to get a better fight this time or a closer fight. But even before the leg broke, you could sort of see that, Connor's, there's more Connor's done in this, and Poirier's really tough, so he's going to beat him. Mm-hmm. I just felt that was inevitable watching the second fight.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I did like the comparison, and I was trying to think. I was like, Manny felt like he was younger, but Manny was almost the same age as Poirier is today, so it's not even that. I for some reason, to me, Manny felt like a new star, whereas Dustin has been around for a while, but no.
Well, Manny was a cultural hero, okay, and who expanded his base past the culture. But he was a cultural hero even before that fight. Poirier's not a cultural hero. That's the difference. But Poirier did, I mean, Manny never had 1.5 and 1.7 million buy fights. I mean, Manny was doing 300,000, and, I actually forgot what the number was for Manny and Oscar as far as pay-per-view. I think it was over, I think, for some reason I'm thinking 1.2 million, but I don't remember. But it was a big number. But, yeah, I mean, I remember, like the reporters after going to Bob Arum, because Oscar was the guy, and he's done. It was like really clear in that fight, Oscar's done, and he was one of the guys who was propping up boxing. And it was just like, now we got Manny, and Manny and Floyd, basically carried boxing for years. And now we've got, who do we have? I mean, there's a whole bunch of guys, but there's no, is there anyone? Because, I mean, at the Floyd, there's no one at that level, because Canelo's still considered the biggest star in his last pay-per-view. Granted, went head up with a strong UFC show, but still, it was like his last pay-per-view didn't, was way under 1 million.
Yeah, I think that Canelo fight was sort of comparable. Remember Floyd did his retirement fight against Andre Berto?
And nobody thought Andre Berto had
a chance. I mean, it was very, very, even though the guy Canelo's fighting he's a good fighter, but no one thought he was going to win. So I think that was the main problem as well. But Wikipedia has 1.25 for the Pacquiao and Oscar fight.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, right in that range. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, no, I mean, I guess who do you think's going to win this thing?
Man, this is a tough one, because I played out in my head. When I played out in my head, I kind of go with Oliveira, but I just feel like the one thing Oliveira is that he's got 25 minutes to get a submission, and Poirier's beaten tougher guys. I mean, Oliveira has 9 in a row, but it's not like they're not good guys, but they're not the level of guys. I mean, Poirier's been fighting nothing but top guys over and over and over again. I mean, Oliveira, he fought Chandler. That's the biggest name, really. But yeah, I could see Poirier knocking him out, but I also could see Oliveira submitting him, and Oliveira's stand-up has looked better, so much better than it used to. So, I don't know. I mean, I know that Poirier's the favorite.
Minus
but yeah, when I think about, Yeah, like but I don't know, when I play it out, I just get this feeling that in the later rounds, I just think that maybe Poirier, I don't know, that maybe Oliveira can get the sub, but it's a great fight. I mean, to me, it's a great fight because it's like one where I absolutely could see it going either way. In any way, I could see Oliveira knocking Poirier out too. That's a possibility. I don't see Poirier submitting Oliveira, but I certainly see him being able to knock him out. I could see the way the fight going with either one being able to beat the other in a decision. Splitting rounds. I could see it being a war. I think probably will be a war. So it's kind of like, I think it's a really cool fight. I mean, I'm excited about it.
And then also Amanda Nunes against Juliana Pena. Nunes is a -1,000 favorite.
Is that what it is now?
Yeah.
Good. That's because I saw the last time I had looked, it was like -500, and I thought like, okay, that's a pretty big thing, and -500. You hate to put it in a championship fight, but I thought it was too low. I actually thought it should be like -800. So, unless like Amanda blows out her knee in the fight, I don't see. I can't see her losing to Juliana Pena. I don't think Juliana Pena's in her league.
I mean, it should be a thrashing, right?
Yeah, or at least one-sided, where she just beats her up and wins a decision, by beating her up. I mean, Pena might hang in there, but yeah, I feel it's going to be a thrashing. I don't feel it's going to be like Germaine, and Germaine was a one-sided fight. I think Amanda won every round, but I thought when Germaine Durand me and Amanda would be a closer fight, or I mean, yeah, I think it'll probably be, I think it'll probably be a thrashing, yeah.
Anything else that you're looking forward to? I know Cody Garbrandt is going down in weight. Gosh, that sounds ridiculous that he's going to try to get. Did you see him today? How did he look at the weigh-in?
He made weight, and I heard that he wasn't stumbling, and it wasn't a disaster or anything like that. He made the weight. But yeah, 125. He's not that small to make 125, but he did. I mean, I remember when Dillashaw made 125 that one time, and he looked so, just like how do you ever do it type of thing. Not so small, but it just didn't seem like possible. But with Cody, yeah, it's pushing it. Garbrandt and O'Malley got into it today with yelling back and forth and everything. So there are the first two matches. Is Cody? Yeah, I think the first two matches on the pay-per-view.
Yes, O'Malley and Paiva. Is that how you pronounce the last name?
Roland Paiva. Yeah.
And then after that is Neil, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce
Santiago Ponzinibbio. He was a good fighter. Ponzinibbio's a good fighter.
That was good.
Yeah.
All right. So big show. I'm so bummed because I bought these tickets to see Trevor Noah. Like, gosh, it probably was I want to say it was like in March or April. And I had no idea that there was going to be a giant UFC show going up against it. So this is like this back to, because the last time, the last UFC show, I was in New York, and I didn't watch it, and then now I'm missing this one. And I was told the last show was awesome. I expect this show to be awesome, so I'm kind of bummed out that I'm missing both of these shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep show. Like, Dominic Cruz is fighting on the prelims, against Pedro Munoz, which is a good fight too.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple other things here. I wanted to make mention just because I thought it was so cool. So I'm on Twitter, and Shams, the guy who's like the new Woj for NBA Twitter, who breaks all the news, he tweeted that Pat McAfee was getting $30 million a year for his show from the, what is it, FanDuel?
Yeah, I think so. I think the new deal for 4 years. Yeah.
Pretty
amazing.
Amazing. But then I think the thing
it's an amazing number to me. That's for sure.
But the other thing that was like, I think people need to know but how much money that he's given to charity based off of this deal, I was like, wow, this guy, he's
he as soon as he signed the deal, he earmarked $8.1 million to a bunch of different charities. So that's, I would like to think that if I had a contract like that, that I would do the same thing, if not more, which is not meaning I'm knocking him, because I'm not. But I would like to think I would do that. I think I would, but it's not like it's ever going to be something that that falls into my lap like it did with him. I mean, the thing with him, I think he's really good.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is the deal with like his numbers were, I don't know what they are now, but I remember looking at his numbers before, and they weren't that impressive to me. It was like, they're good, but they're not like something that, you would pay $30 million a year for. But he must, I don't know if it's the right thing at the right time. You know what I mean? It's not like it's Joe Rogan where, for whatever reason, even though like I roll my eyes at Joe Rogan all the time, the reality is I hear people talk to me about Joe Rogan. He's like a household name, like people who are not UFC fans. They're not, fans of like whatever, news radio show that he did a million years ago or anything like that. But Joe Rogan, the talk show, the podcast host, everybody talks about him. He just, so I can sort of see why he got a giant money deal. But I don't ever hear in real life anyone ever bring up Pat McAfee to me on anything. In my, of course with wrestling you do, because he's done wrestling, and he was a former football player, and he does have names in sports. But that's like, I find that like from my friends, it's more of a fringe sports name, not a mainstream name. Like certainly like if you asked anyone in the street who Joe Rogan and Pat McAfee were, like most people wouldn't know Pat McAfee, and I don't want to say everyone would know Joe Rogan, but a lot of people would know Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Rogan's kind of like the new version of the shock jock. Like you remember back when Howard Stern was so popular.
Yeah,
like
it's funny. I was thinking the same thing. And Howard Stern got a ridiculous amount of money, but Howard Stern actually had like, was the biggest radio guy in the world when he got his big break. His big money break was Sirius. And he was already making big money. But yeah. No, Rogan is, it's like he's a big star for whatever, he is, it's like it's undeniable.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing that I had for you is I wanted to talk a little bit about your new book, just in time for Christmas, the 1999 yearbook. And so I actually bought it before you would even, I think before you even knew it hit the store. It was out on Kindle like super early, before actually the physical copy was available. So I had it, and I'm reading the first chapter, or I guess it's the introduction, and you were writing about in 1999 how Vince McMahon is making all kinds of new money, yet the pay for the talent wasn't going up at the same ratio, and how and I thought it was amazing because it's the same story that you're telling today when it comes to WWE.
It's the same. The Vince and Dana story will be the same story forever. that the company will be making more and more money, and that the talent will go up, but they will not go up at the same percentage as compared to other sports athletes. There's been a lot. I've seen so much on UFC fighter pay this week, and Dana's talked about, they actually make more than boxers, which they don't. It's just like, do they make more? Does a UFC star make more than a club boxer? Of course. Does the upper echelon of, like, you put Tyson Fury in a 800,000 buy fight, and you put Francis Ngannou in the same fight, and Tyson Fury's making 15 times what Francis Ngannou's making for the same number of dollars brought in. It's ridiculous.
You could even go the other way, right? Like someone like Terrence Crawford. What did he make? A few million for his fight, right? The recent one against against Sean Porter.
Didn't he make 6 for 190,000 by fight?
Yeah. So I mean, someone like Terrence Crawford, who is not a proven draw, has never been a proven draw, and that's kind of like.
And I mean, he barely beat Adam Page and Omega. He had $6 million.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is someone like, and Crawford's a great boxer. It's, there's something to him that doesn't really resonate with boxing fans, mainstream boxing fans.
Is he like another Andre Ward?
No, I think Andre Ward is even, because Andre Ward had the Olympics, he was still because
I never got why Andre Ward didn't draw. I always thought like he was so good, he never got beat. He won the medal in the Olympics. So from day one he was a star, but yet he never, like Oscar. Oscar, I always thought the big part of Oscar was coming from the Olympics, and we watched him from the Olympics all the way to the top, right? And Andre Ward was sort of the same thing, but Oscar was like a giant draw, and Andre Ward never was.
Yeah, I think some of it was he was at a weight where there were a lot of name guys. Had he come around now, where there is someone like a Canelo or a Golovkin, I think he would have probably made been more of a name and more of a draw. But basically what I was saying is someone like Crawford, you put him in there and he makes what he made, and like I should never use the phrase poor John Jones, but someone like John Jones, who is a draw and the best fighter of all time, depending on what metric you use or whatever. Like John Jones is fighting to like really hard to get a piece of $6 million for a fight, and he can actually.
Well,
sell.
I think John's probably making close to that, but John's drawing way 5 times as much to make that, and John's in an interesting position because I think he knows he's getting older. And he has a lot of money and probably enough to live the rest of his life on, but he wants to be paid fairly. But I think deep down in his head, he also knows he's not the fighter he once was, and that's kind of scary when you just like would not even train and be able to beat everybody, and now guys are getting closer and closer to him. No matter what he says. I mean, they are. I mean, I thought Reyes beat him. You know what I mean? And 3 years, 4 years earlier, Reyes isn't beating him. No way. I mean, he, whatever. So I think that's but I mean, like, when him and Gargano wanted to fight each other, and that thing was going to do big business, and UFC didn't pay them anywhere close, or wasn't willing to pay either of them anywhere close to what that thing was worth. It would draw. I mean, that tells you. I mean, like they are not going to allow anyone, even if they're going to make more money, or if or ESPN's going to make a killing on a fight, even at a higher pay level, they're just not going to allow that to happen. They want to keep complete control over those purses to not get them too high.
All right, quickly back to your book. What are the stories that are the main stories from 1999 that people will be reading about if they buy it?
Yeah, I mean, the Owen Hart thing obviously was the biggest story, one of the biggest stories in history of wrestling. So yeah, it's like an incredible amount of coverage of that. Just what happened, Owen Hart bio, week by week, the family falling apart, just that whole thing. I remember the big story on Rick Rude, Gorilla Monsoon, Jumbo Tsuruta, retiring. Sam Mushnick was a big story. The book's got all the Hall of Fame bios for that year too, which was, there's a ton in that book. There really is. I mean, it's like, and the main theme is WWE's growing to, close to its biggest year in its history. 1999, 2000 were really the peaks. 2001 to a degree was also, but it was a little bit on the fumes of the great 2000, I think, in a lot of ways. I think 99 and 2000 were the real, big years. And then WCW just falling apart, and obviously, Vince Russo leaving WWF for WCW, the first couple months of Vince Russo era in WCW, which the whole WCW year was a mind-boggling year, because even though, like, the year they lost all the money was 2000, the fact is that was paying for the sins of 1999, the 2000 year, because the 1999 creative of WCW was so ungodly horrible. That's all I could say. It was I remember living through it, and I couldn't believe how bad it was week after week, week in and week out. I mean, they ran off the audience. People talk about WWE being bad. They've never run off an audience like WCW did. I mean, not even close. When you're going in, I just did the numbers, and, WWE attendance is fine by normal standards. I mean, not attitude era standards, but they're not that hot, but they're fine. I mean, WCW was, they went from 8,000 to 2,400. You know what I mean? I mean, it's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny because as I'm, I've been reading a lot of the historical stuff from '97 as well. And another thing that sort of came up as comparison to today is there was a tweet or something that had come out. Maybe it was Brandon Thurston about how much actual in-ring wrestling per wrestling show. And so there was this discussion about, some of these shows, it's very little. I think you guys had even talked about it. And then I was reading a '97 Observer from December, and you had one of the shows at like 14 minutes. And I was like, this stuff used to happen all the time. And in fact...
Oh, WWE used to do all the short matches. But here's the thing that's so weird is, like, people forget, like, WCW, when Dusty was booking, the whole show was 30-second match, 90-second interview. Squash, squash, squash.
Yeah.
And people now remember this is this fond, wonderful period. And WCW did pretty decent, I mean, I wouldn't say they did great. Dusty probably went too far in that direction. But it wasn't like people think of, oh, my God, all it is. No, I mean, I never heard everyone go, oh, there's no wrestling, it's all talking. Partially because the talking was so damn good. But that's what it was. So I never worry about, I never worry about, the percentage of time between talking and wrestling. To me, it's more the quality of, if it's great talking, I mean, I don't think anyone should ever talk for 15 minutes. But if it's great 5-minute talking or versus lousy 10-minute wrestling, that's not a positive. I mean, in the sense of, you want quality. You want quality guys. You want quality excitement. Talking is a big part of wrestling. Wrestling is also a big part of wrestling. You want a balance. And like AEW having more in-ring time than WWE, to me, that's not a plus. For AEW, I guess it would be a plus because I think AEW fans want the good match, whereas the WWE fans want, I don't know what they want, but they just want to be comfortable. With the stars, they want their 20 guys, and I'm not sure that, again, that's, there's a part of me that goes, you really should focus on the top guys rather than try to focus on 100 guys. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm sitting here going like, oh, AEW should copy WWE, and it's like, if I think that, then it's like, then I'm the one who's out of touch, because AEW did not get close to WWE by not being much better than WWE. So, I mean, but I do think that there's certain things like again, I do think that there could be more rematches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily. I think that they could do. Again, like I'll sit here and go like, you realize there's only been one Young Bucks FTR match. I mean, if I would have booked 5 to 7 the first year alone. You know what I mean? But my philosophy is different. And yeah, it would get old after a certain number, and then when it gets to that number, yeah, you move on. But it's like one in a year plus, this feud that people talked about for years and years and years before it ever happened. Then you do one match, and it's not like the one match wasn't one of the best tag team matches in the history of the United States, because it was. I mean, if it sucked, I'd go, oh God, they just didn't mesh. But they had an incredible match, and then they just moved away from it and never did it again, and they still haven't done it again. So to me, it's like, yeah, there's things, that you could do. You have so many stars, they can go against each other. They don't have to be, so many throwaway matches. Like Tony takes such pride. There's only been one Omega Jericho match in the whole history of the company. When this thing started, they were the two top guys. I mean, could you imagine like Austin and Rock having like one match, only one, like including TVs, pay-per-views, house shows, only one? No, they had dozens and dozens. And that was a good thing. It was one of the great feuds of all time. One match does not make a great feud of all time. Even though it had the potential to be. So there's like a medium there, but yeah, it's like to me it's like, yes, there's more ring time in AEW, and based on what their audience wants, there should be more ring time. But you want quality interviews. You want quality interviews on the show. And sometimes, in the right situation, like MJF and Punk a couple weeks ago, where they were out there for 19 minutes, and granted, I think maybe 13 or 14 might have been better than 19, but it was phenomenal, and I did not think they went necessarily too long. I thought it was a great, great segment. So it's just, it's to me, I don't, I just think that you just want quality, whatever it is. If you've got guys who are great, great, great at talking like MJF, you can go longer. If you've got guys that just kind of struggle on the mic, then they go shorter, but they're good in the ring. If you've got a guy like Danielson who can do both, have him do both.
So people would just go to Amazon to get it?
Amazon.com, Amazon.ca in Canada. There's also, Inside the Ropes, we should have a link to it as far as in the UK, because the book itself ships directly from them in the UK, whereas in the United States and Canada, it would ship from Amazon.
Are there any plans for the next one yet?
Too early. As far as year goes, I don't know. There's a lot of different choices, because we've only done, I think, the 2014 was recent. Most of them are old, or like decades old, which again, those years would be the years, because those years were when wrestling was the hottest and they were pivotal years. But maybe it's a little early to do like 2018, 2019. I think 2018 is a real pivotal year when I look back now. Because again, Omega Jericho was huge. Everything that set up the beginnings of AEW. 2019 maybe even bigger, because it's when AEW first started. There's 2000 was a big year. I know that there's been talk of doing something in the 80s even.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah. We definitely talked about maybe, I don't know, maybe one of the years with the Crockett Vince feud, like 86 or 89 with the Flair and Steamboat year and all that. There's a lot of different years that we could do, but as long as they sell, we'll continue to do them. So a lot of years will be covered. Hopefully at some point there's 30 books out there. That's the goal, right? Is to get every year covered at some point.
Yes, I've read some stuff from 87 and 88 and 89, but anything before then, like I've outside of, I think I actually gave this to you. I found, I don't know, probably like 15 years ago, I found your 84 yearbook, and I think it was like at a flea market or something. Someone had it, and
yeah, right, you did. I remember you told me.
Yeah, so that, like, just all that stuff just is kind of mind blowing to me, because all I was reading back then was Pro Wrestling Illustrated. But yeah, like anything from the 80s is mind blowing, because not only is the business very different, but there are so many things in your writing of where things were possibly going, but for some reason or another, it doesn't happen that way. And like, there are like things like, that people have heard these stories before, but how many times, Vince wanted Ric Flair before he actually got him in 91. Like there's the time in 88 where there was talk. And so it's stuff like that where I go back and I read it and I go like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. It could have changed the entire landscape of wrestling if it happened. So there's
a lot of
like
things,
that.
a lot of things happened over the course of years that if they didn't happen or happened differently, it could have changed, the entire landscape of wrestling. It's really interesting how much like, I don't want to say flukes because that's not the right word, but things happened that easily couldn't have happened and the business would be entirely different. Vince could have failed at the first WrestleMania.
Well, yeah, you talked about it on the Jericho podcast. You and Wade were on the Jericho podcast.
Yeah.
Jericho stole our idea. No, I'm just kidding. It was fun to hear you guys on that one as well. But yeah, you mentioned it. You said, if Hogan, if it wasn't Hogan, that it would have probably failed.
Oh, I think without Hogan, the expansion fails. And I don't think people really today give Hogan the credit, because everyone, it's like Vince, and it's like if Vince didn't have Hogan, if there was no Hogan, there was nobody. Bruiser Brody wouldn't have been the guy. Stan Hansen wouldn't have been the guy. Snuka couldn't have been the guy. There was nobody. Flair would have been the next best guy, and I don't know that Flair leaves Crockett for anything. He was just so comfortable in Charlotte. He was established there, and I don't know that he would have seen the future. I think he just would have been happy being NWA World Champion. And I don't know that Vince, I don't know that Vince would have gone with Flair in the sense of it wasn't Hogan was Vince's kind of guy. Vince's the prototype was superstar Billy Graham, and Hogan was the next generation superstar Billy Graham. And there's the sad thing, of course, is superstar Billy Graham knows that and knows that it, what was the name of the thing, 5 years too early or whatever, or
20 years too soon or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was. Well, it's funny because, if he was, let's see, Billy was born in 43, I think. So if he was born and Hogan was born in 53. So if Billy's 10 years younger, he's Hulk Hogan because there's no Hulk Hogan to copy from him. Hulk Hogan would have never figured it out without a Billy Graham to copy from. And and Billy was a better talker than Hogan. He was not a better wrestler and he had a better body too. He wasn't quite as tall, but Billy could have self-destructed in a way Hogan didn't. That's for sure. But that same thing. Billy had so much charisma. Not that Hogan probably had more, but Billy had so much charisma. But there's just like so many different. Whatever the world changes in so many different ways. Look. If you take Lorenzo Fertitta, Dana White, or Joe Silva out of the picture, UFC does not make it to 2005. It's MMA never even becomes a sport in this country of anything more than what kickboxing is, and maybe less than that. Because if it wasn't for Lorenzo, they wouldn't have put up the money to get cleared in all those places because nobody else could have cleared them in Nevada in the first place. If you didn't have Joe Silva actually knowing what was going on, these guys would have made so many mistakes in booking, and we're going to. And if you don't have, and Dana's a phenomenal promoter. You just had some guy like, a normal front man guy without the charisma of Dana out there selling fights. They never would have turned the corner. When I think about that, UFC was, the concept of what it is being big. Yeah, it could have been. But it probably wasn't going to happen. If Dan Lambert had bought UFC, he'd be the first to tell you it never would have been anything close to this. And Dan Lambert had money, but he didn't have Lorenzo money. Dan Lambert, because Dan Lambert was the guy who was going to buy it from Meyerowitz. Now, granted, if it wasn't for McCain, Meyerowitz would have never needed to sell, but Meyerowitz was never going to take it to the levels that these guys took it. He might have been able to get it a little more popular. But he would have never gotten it in. I don't think he would have ever gotten it on television. And that was a big fight to get it on television. And the Ultimate Fighter was Joe Silva's idea. Was the Ultimate Fighter?
What happens if Vince says no, that they can't come on after Raw?
They wouldn't be on after Raw. They wouldn't be on the channel, and it wasn't like there were 50 channels wanting them, and Spike just was the one that outbid for everyone. Nobody wanted them, and Spike, even though they like to claim that they were the ones who created the show, the fact is that they only bought it as it's like, it wasn't exactly a time buy, but it pretty much was, in the sense that, Lorenzo paid for all the production, and they didn't pay for rights. Now, after the first year, yes, then they paid for rights. But originally, to get it on the air, he had to basically, it's essentially a time buy first year, and nobody else would have been able to afford that. And it wasn't like the other channels wanted it, so yeah, it's like all of these things, when you look back, that became so big or whatever, it's like a fluke. I mean, if there was no Hulk Hogan in pro wrestling, I don't know that Vince, he would try to expand it without him, but I don't know that he would succeed. And I think he wouldn't have. I think he would not have succeeded. But like all of these things that end up happening, if Dana didn't have Lorenzo's money, if Lorenzo didn't have Dana's charisma as a front man, like they didn't have Joe, would not have gotten to 2005. Would have been too much money lost, and they would have given up. And Lorenzo almost gave up. So yeah, and then when they got on TV, they'll say that if it wasn't for Griffin Bonner, they might not have gotten a new deal, but they would have. Their ratings were good enough. I don't think Griffin Bonner was very, very important. But like to say like we wouldn't have UFC if it wasn't for Griffin Bonner, I would not say that that's the case. But that was certainly very pivotal. I do think that Koscheck and Lieben don't get the credit that they deserve, because to me, with my friends, that was the turning point, was Koscheck and Lieben. Because it was like, people weren't really watching Ultimate Fighter. It was just something on after wrestling and all this. But Koscheck and Lieben out-wrestled wrestling, and it was when wrestling was really popular. And then the next week, that's when they did the big number, and then, once they had the established ratings thing, then TV, yeah, you're established being able to draw ratings at 11:30 at night, like those guys did. Yeah, you're gonna make it at that point, and they did. But to get to there was, those things to get to there was a lot of, luck involved. I mean, how do you get a Forrest Griffin and a Chris Lieben, these Bonner and these characters, all on one season of a reality show? I mean, look at all the boring guys in the subsequent seasons, except for like, how many of those guys in other seasons were like that? I mean, almost, Bisping and maybe Nate Diaz, there weren't that many, if you really look at like super charismatic guys coming out of it. But that first season, you really did have some guys.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's it from here. You and Brian will be back tomorrow night after the UFC. Talk about a bunch of other stuff. So for Dave, I'm Garrett. To everybody, thanks for listening.